Hey, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about something that I'm not a big fan of, which is the blues. Now, everyone who knows me knows that I'm not really a huge fan of the blues, and I think one of the reasons is because I feel that it's the same old thing. It's regurgitating the same thing. For me, when Zeppelin did the blues, it was like, oh wow, and I got really excited about it. But it really didn't extend much beyond them. That being said, I can appreciate good players that play the blues, and which brings me up to today's conversation. A friend of mine on Facebook posted this post where he was asking who you preferred, Stevie Ray Vaughan or Mike Bloomfield. And I thought, what an interesting question, because I was born in '68. Bloomfield died in like '81, but his career was probably over by like '73, '72. He had a bad drug problem and wasn't really putting out a lot of material. Anyways, I think my whole generation and younger missed the Mike Bloomfield thing. And maybe kids growing up, if you were a kid in the '60s, you caught it. So, I did a little what I call rabbit holing. I jumped in the rabbit hole on YouTube and I looked up all this Mike Bloomfield stuff. And I thought he was a great player. He was a young kid living in Chicago who would hang out with the old blues guys, really got into it, learned it, and had a great love, admiration, and respect for it. And I think he wishes he was BB King, and he was a great player. In some respects, I like his playing a lot better than BB King's. I'm not a huge BB King guy. Um, I know that's blasphemy for some people, but whatever. Just never did it for me. But in general, I think that he was a really great player. Of course, and I do think he was ahead of his time. The problem I think that Mike Bloomfield had, when I listen to his interviews, there's some interviews from 1975 that are online that are great. But when I listen to them, what I hear is a guy who loves the blues, but doesn't love the lazy way that it's put together. He played on one of Bob Dylan's album, I think it was Highway 51. And he talks about how that he was just giving like a chart, go play, or they was told chord progressions, but nobody worked out any arrangement, and that bothered him. And I know when he did the Electric Flag album, that first album, which is definitely worth checking out. Buddy Miles on vocal, who's excellent, and they had another guy singing too, I believe. And but it was good stuff. It definitely, it like predates the Blood, Sweat, and Tears, that sound, and it predates like Chicago, that type of thing. But he could have gone that way had, I think, that drugs didn't play such a big part in his life. I think drugs was the end of Mike Bloomfield. I think without them, and with some direction and probably a little bit more support, I don't know if I even go that far, but I just think that he probably could have, if his heart was in it, could have been one of the greatest of all time. Do I think he's one of the greatest of all time now? I know, not even close. And why I think that is because, yeah, he played some great stuff. So he hated the Super Sessions, hated the whole idea of it, and it's a great record, and you should check it out. He hated it because it was just an open jam. They released it and it sold well, and his Electric Flag album did not. And he put a lot of work into it. So he didn't see the reward. But that could be the fact that it wasn't that great of a record. I'm not going to say the Electric Flag's up with Chicago's first album. It's not even close. But I think the potential was there. It was an earlier time. And, he also played with Butterfield, and he played, who was on rhythm then? Elvin Bishop, who of course, had some big hits in the '70s. But I think that this conversation happened about who do you like better, or what do you like better. And personally, after I delved down the rabbit hole to look up Mike Bloomfield, I think the question should have been, what do you prefer, Chicago blues or Texas blues? Because it's really Chicago blues is what he's playing. I mean, if you're going to ask me who do I think a better player is, I think Stevie Ray Vaughan was technically a better player, and I like what he played. So notice I said, and I liked what he played more. If you like what Mike Bloomfield, if you prefer the Chicago style, it doesn't matter how great Stevie Ray Vaughan is or how great any Texas blues guy is, Billy Gibbons, it wouldn't matter because you prefer Chicago blues. That's what you prefer. Which is why I always hate these, like, who do you think the best is? Because it really comes down to who's your favorite and what flavor do you like. You know, people always sit there and say, oh, the town, we talk about pizza a lot. I'm a big pizza guy, and there's Pizza Regina in Boston, which is better than anything on the whole West Coast. But there's a place called the Town Spa in Stoughton, Mass. And, some people are going to say, the Linwood's better. And it's not, in my opinion. I think the crust tastes frozen. I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't like about it. But the masses obviously think the Spa is because the Spa does a hell of a lot more business. But it doesn't quantify anything except for relatability. And what I mean by that is, so if you have a guy like Stevie Ray Vaughan who's relatable and he's out there selling records, it's because he's connecting with a lot of people. And I don't think Mike Bloomfield had that. I think Mike Bloomfield is a guitar player's guitar player. I don't think his material is that strong. And I think that the fans of him really recognize what a great player he was or could have been, or potentially, in my opinion, what he potentially had. But, for my criteria of what I like in a player, he lacks some of that. And he has a lot of what I like. I mean, he's a very feeling player. He feels the song. He's got great vibrato, which I hate to say, but it's like, but that's part of the feeling of it in the song. He really gets into it. But what he doesn't have is his bends aren't clear. They're not great. He does like a lot of your typical blues bending because a lot of his heroes play that way. Oddly enough, I'm wearing a Nashville, Tennessee shirt, and I like the country bend guys, the guys who can bend right to pitch. I love that sound. That, for me, and a lot of the Texas blues guy, because they grew up around country music, they get a lot of that too. And so their bends are dead on. And so as far as Billy Gibbons and Stevie Ray, as far as those blues guys go, and I'm not a huge Stevie Ray fan. I don't really care for him, his voice, and I don't care for the songs. But Billy Gibbons all day. Love him. Love him. Not that this conversation's going anywhere, but I did kind of want to mention, that here's a guy, and if you're younger than I am, so I'm 49, if you're younger than me, Mike Bloomfield is someone you should check out. I was very interested. It was a very interesting find to find these songs, look them up, listen to what he was doing. Listen to his interviews. He had some interesting things to say about Bob Dylan. I find his stuff, the interviews and whatnot, he's a little hippie-ish, but, he's a Chicago kid, and he was young. He died at 37 and 81, so all the stuff he did from like 65 to 70 he was very young doing that stuff. But he was a good player, and I think that if anything, from my buddy Jim's post about which guy do you like better, I think the post should be, this is somebody you should check out. And I really enjoy it. And you can learn a lot of good stuff from him. I mean, he had his own style, definitely his technique. It's funny, just because I don't like a guitar, I'm not a huge fan of a guitar player, it doesn't mean that you can't learn something from them. Or hear something of value. Music is music. It's just what you like, but it's all the same stuff, And I just think that, so I think Mike Bloomfield's somebody to check out. And as far as in the blues realm, like I said, I grew up as a shred guy. Like that was my thing. I was like I wanted when I was 13 years old, 14. I wanted to be the fastest, and I heard Ingve, and it was like I got to learn all the Ingve stuff. And then I found, then Uli Roth in 1985 came out with an album called Beyond the Astral Skies, and I was like, oh, here's Ingve, but it has more. It's more musical. There was something about that record I think was probably one of the great eye openers for me because it incorporated bringing in a bluesier, Hendrixy technique into that neoclassical, which I loved. And eventually I kind of got out of that when we got into the 80s. I like into the 80s. I mean, when we got into the later 80s, like 86, 87, and I found the Smiths and then Depeche Mode and The Cure and Cocteau Twins. And I found all these guitar players that are doing these really nice ethereal stuff. And it's all just very good. And I love that. And that's, and then of course I got into Larry Carlton and all that. But it's like, I'm all over the place. I love it all. Music is a great thing. It's something that should bring people together and not separate, divide us. And I just wanted to say, if you have a chance, check out some Mike Bloomfield stuff on the web. It's there's some great stuff out there. It was interesting, and I'm glad that Jim posted that comparison, because in the end, I could care less who likes, like people were saying their opinion, and it's like, who cares what your opinion is? Now I got two guys, I'm gonna go look at their stuff and get some music out of it. Someone likes Bloomfield better. Who gives a shit? I don't care. Oh, you like my Bloomfield? It doesn't matter to me if you get something to say about it or you wanted to point out something. So I think the song's called Over Loving You. I think that's a really cool song by the Electric Flag. East West, the record by Butterfield's band is really good. Check it out. Overall, it was a nice find, and I appreciate any time somebody can point me into the direction of music that I haven't heard before. Anyways, I gotta run. I mentor a kid that plays drums, and I'm off to go do that. You can look him up at Drummerboy135 on YouTube. And if you can, hit like and subscribe on my channel. Anyways, I'm out of here. Very good.